Thank you. And I will hand off the introduction to my colleague at the New England Rug Society, Julia Bailey. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Greetings, everyone. On behalf of the New England Rug Society, I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Luca Brancati of Turin, Italy. In 1988, Luca was the first to organize an exhibition of Afghan war rugs. He has the only known collection consisting exclusively of war rugs dating from the Russian period. Trained in medieval art history, Luca runs a company devoted to art conservation. His publications include the 1999 study, The Carpets of the Painters, which is mercifully in English as well as Italian, and with Amadeo Badini, the 2021 book on war rugs, Tappeti della Guerra Afghan, of which we hope there will be a forthcoming English translation soon. Luca's presentation today will focus on the development of Afghan war rugs from the Russian era until the present, showing their different designs and formats. So now, from wherever you are, please join Jean and me in welcoming our speaker, Luca Brancati. Over to you, Luca.
Hello. Hello to all those connecting from all over the world. And thanks, Jean, and thanks, Julia, for having introduced me so well. So let's begin. The title of my presentation says, Afghan War Rugs, 1979-2022. But perhaps it would be better to say it in the plural. War rugs are not all the same, of course. In fact, I could say that no two are the same, and the quality and decoration of the war rugs reflect the period in which they were knotted. Today, it will not be an exhaustive talk on all about, but only a short approach to give you some personal points of view. As Julia just said, my collection consists exclusively of carpets purchased no later than 1988 and exhibited in over 6 exhibitions that year. Today, however, I will show you not only carpets from my collection, but also rugs belonging to other friends as well. We can divide the Afghan war rug phenomenon into 4 main periods. The first 10 years, from Soviet invasion in 1979 to the retreat in 1929. Then, from 1929 till 2001, from Mujahideen to civil war, and then to Taliban. Finally, the last 20 years ago, the period of the Operation Enduring Freedom, the US and the Allied coalition. And then from now on, well, I really expect and hope to see only the modification of old ornamentation motifs and no new weapons. Why, for me and many other scholars, collectors, and the museum curators, Afghan war rugs are so important. When I first saw them, as my Afghan friends smiled at the weirdness, I immediately thought they were extraordinarily historical documents. For the first time in many years, we had rugs genuinely and directly connected to their time. This is what I wrote at the time, because they are historical documents, and for the first time, it is possible to observe the evolution or may I say involution, of a decorative heritage right from its appearance in 1989. Here are some quotes from 1988, which already clearly stated the importance of these artifacts. The first is an Italian article of a journalist, an important Italian journalist, that wrote, the imprint is my translation, the imprint that the Soviet occupation left on Afghan life can be recognized above all in the stylized design of an helicopter among the traditional arabesques of the Herat carpets. In the same year, in a letter of the late Giorgio Benham to me, he wrote, "From a political and historical point of view, I think they are one of the most interesting phenomena in rugdom." Slightly later, Tatiana Divans, in Oriental Review, wrote, "Are war rugs important? Yes, in that they are the only group of rugs woven reflecting actual events contemporaneous with the weaving. Are they things of beauty? In the eyes of this beholder, you bet." And to understand even more their importance, look at this carpet that's not mine. Graham Gower donated his entire collection of war rugs to the British Museum in 2010, which he collected between 2005 to 2010 on the London market. This rug from his collection, possibly for me, a pictorial image of Lake Karga, was chosen along with 99 other objects to tell the story of human civilization in a traveling exhibition originated from a popular radio program of the BBC with the British Museum, and is published in the Hong Kong Heritage Museum catalog. So what about the classification? And there is no single shared system to classify war rugs, but we can adopt different approaches. There are many. My personal approach is mainly age and provenance. I'm much less interested in armaments, but we can classify by provenance, use, size, technique, designs, armaments, rarity, and why not value. But is there a collectible market value? Well, in my opinion, yes. There is still too little expertise on collectible aspects. So, talk about the age. From the earliest, certainly known and dated one. This carpet is the Gol Rahman and is certainly, at the moment, the oldest war rug known, and is so called after the name in the upper right Arabic inscription. Beside is a newer, one of many in the field, a symbol of peace, which we will also talk about later. It shows a very particular features compared to the other now known old ones. And in some ways, it appears Turkmen. The carpet was bought by the Swiss dealer Reto Christoffel in 1982-1983, and thereafter, since 1989, is in the collection of Paul Buccaradici in the Biblioteca Afghanica of Lichtal in Switzerland. And we see the same gold Rahman rug hanging here during the very first exhibition in a museum that was held at the MAK, the Museum für Angewandte Kunst in Vienna in 1993. To inaugurate the renovated famous classical carpets hall, the people of gang art thought that to set up an exhibition of modern carpets, but which, like the old ones, had something original to document. And on the right, on the wall on the opening night of the MAK exhibition is my runner, together with other rugs that I will show you shortly. And on the left, a young Luca Brancati standing in front of the green runner, my first war rug. Above, some of the carpets of my collection. Here, just a small detail of the tank with the baby inscription inside. And the runner, it is incredibly soft and fine, made wool on wool, 5 meters long, and very well made. The interesting thing is that there are inscriptions in 3 different languages. Here, at the detail of the box, the pink box, you can see the typical tulip vase and the English and Cyrillic lettering. And here, a preview of what I will discuss shortly, a small house with an arrow-headed chimney. This is what, according to our research, is the second known carpet with certain chronological references. The German carpet dealer Peter Renz is here shown in a 1985 local newspaper, the Schwarzwalder Bote, with an commas, Afghanische Teppich, a Baluch white runner bought in Pakistan. Since only a part of it can be seen, my friend and co-author Vittorio Bedini tried a virtual reconstruction. When we asked Renz for a color picture of the carpet a few years ago, he actually sent us another piece, albeit very similar. But if you notice, it doesn't have the peculiar medallion of the first one. Like the first, this one also shows the house with the arrowhead chimney, which at this point, I believe to be one of the drawings attributable to the First War rug phase. And here, a Javal, one of 7 in my collection, of which you see the front, now you see the front and the back. This big bag shows helicopters and peacocks with the arrowhead chimney houses. Therefore, this rug too is attributable to the first phase, as the previous runner. Maybe we are dealing with a single workshop, no one knows at the moment. The same trademark, I can say, is in a large carpet, the largest seen by me in those years. It's soft, made with mixed techniques, and knotted in relief, leaving the structure visible and exposed, with long and beautiful lamps, the hand panels. As in the previous ones, There are traditional decorative elements and new designs captured from the daily landscape altered by the invaders. Ancient geometric symbols, plants, vases with tulips, mugs and teapots, but also vehicles, planes, and helicopters that look like the rows of Space Invaders game, the electronic games of the 80s, as well as Kalashnikov assault machine guns with the red bullet just fired. Perhaps another trademark, but it is the only case I have found, is in this runner on your right. The runner always from the first period, with large vases, with tulip flowers and tanks and planes mixed with teapots. I've always pointed out that the stylization of armaments are childish, rendered with cultural tools of the people of that time. Now is the time to highlight the production area and the villages identified thanks to my sources of that time. No one else has until now highlighted any manufacturing villages of the time. They are mainly located in the northwest of the country, around the cities of Herat, Farah, and Kalinau. Kabul, Peshawar, Quetta, and Mashhad were the main centers of trade. And this is my faithful map of the time, the real one, printed in Iran in the 80s, where my source had highlighted for me all the villages active at the time. So now we talk about Sarkilimdar. Here we have 3 Sarkilimdar. That is a trade name that means kilim, up and down, the flat weave on either side of the rug, from Kalinau area. Many of these carpets show a landscape field with mountains, rivers or lakes, animals, houses, and everyday life, all helplessly watching the battle in the sky from the ground. The weaving techniques represent some peculiar features of the carpets of this area: pile weaving with salt pepper effect, relief or embossed knotting, and play weave as kilim and sumac. In the middle one, a very distinctive and rare design, a kind of vine with corporal rank surrounding a mysterious center. We'll find another relative later, I will show you. And this one is one of the finest in my collection, a kind of soffre with all mixed techniques and a very nomadic raw and thin wool, surely hand-spun. The border is made up of beautiful stripes, the innermost traditional ones, woven with different techniques, the outer one with a long column of military vehicles is knotted in relief. The small central square depicts a seemingly peaceful and bucolic scene, while in the sky, an anti-aircraft battle is underway with a bomb impacting the ground. In no other piece, as in this one, is the bridge between old and new perceived. Other 3 landscapes are on rugs, still from Sarkilimdar, from Kalinau area, Sarkilimdar type. We see mosques, cities, and minarets. In the one on the right, there are also numerous writings invoking Allah and Afghanistan in the clouds. This Javal is very special. almost unique, I think. There is always a detail in each piece that makes them unique. In the field, a decoration with facing lions, while in the border, a column of armed vehicles. In the helicopter at the bottom, a silhouette of a red soldier, which I used for the cover of my small autobiographical book, From Afghanistan to Italy, that is available from me. In the collection, Chavals occupy a very special space because they are extremely rare. I acquired them all together and they were already a collection in Kabul. Exactly because they are objects of personal use, they represent well the spontaneity, at least in the beginning, of war rugs. Otherwise, I ask a question. If they were originally intended for trade, why use so much precious wool to weave so richly the back of this bag when the same wool could be used to make another rug? The weapons are well harmonized with the rest of the decoration. And here we have 3 rows of 2-faced Soviet model guns with the half moon on the grip. At the top is the proud signature of the owner or weaver, Mohammed in Afghanistan. It's woven with multi-technique, and all the details make this piece one of the oldest. And again, a beautiful bag from the early period, woven in multi-technique as well, with the weapons discreetly dissimulated. Lastly, a longer wide javal, just so you can also see here the unusual trellis with the corporal ranks that we had seen before in the slide 22. So now talk about the zakinis, or as some Afghan people said at the time, the tanki design. The origin of the trade term zakini is still unclear. Some have claimed that is the name of a Baluchi tribe between Herat and Farah, but this is uncertain. Zakini were at that time the most commercial carpets, more common and also less expensive than, or respectively rarer and more sought after Sarkilimdar. But those pieces were at the same time the most prized war carpets among common people here in the West. I personally began to find them around 1986, usually in Zaronim and Sejadeh formats, wool on wool. Here is one of the finest and most beautiful that already highlights the use of patterns or cartoons in an organized workshop. And please look at the curious human figures, at the use of fluo colors, and at the presence of some huers in a balanced mix of traditional and war decoration. These 2 zakinis also show the use of fluo colors, a sign, in my experience, of an early period. In fact, later, this feature is no longer found. In the late 1980s, military operation on the ground by the Soviet army gradually made good wool quality and variety of colors less available. On the left is a beautiful and interesting zucchini, of which there is a very similar one in the Berlin Museum für Islamische Kunst. The British Museum is not the only museum in Europe that owns wool rugs. It most likely belongs to the immediate post-Soviet period, and there is an interesting story about it. F-16 jets were used by the Pakistanis between 1986 and 1989, and Afghanistan claimed to have shot down one Pakistani F-16A during an encounter on April 29, 1987. Perhaps this is a celebratory carpet. On the right is another transitional zucchini with the ewers and table design. What I want to point out here is the start of the alteration in the design of the tanks. Please pay attention at the variation of the tanks, of the tracks of the tanks, and descriptions such as tank or Allah. To better explain what I call decorative involution due to the coping process from a carpet to another carpet, let us look at three pieces with the ewers and table decoration. On the left, one of the first known ones. I bought it between 1986 and 1987, and here the design is very detailed. Instead, in the middle one, some details are lost and the lettering on the table and tanks appears. Even the pots or steaming mugs, I don't know what are they, change completely. And in the third rug on the right, everything becomes more rural, and it seems obvious that the contact between with the original model has been lost. Continuing to talk about design, here are two small baluchis with rare design noted in relief. On the left, a very intimate white prayer with only two planes beside the vases. And on the right, a pomegranate tree design with 4 planes between the branches and a beautiful border with armored vehicles. So now we shift a little bit and begin to look at the refugee war rugs. For me, refugee war rugs are a distinctive group. They are refugee war rugs. They are not always poor Afghan. They are sometimes Turkmen or Pakistani or Iranian or even Western. And here you can see a 1989 shot by Chris Walter, published in Oriental Rug Review, with 2 Turkmen weavers in the Peshawar refugee camp. And small rugs, small refugee rugs made in the refugee camps have been massively produced and have been widely distributed. Here we see one in a frame of a movie with Tom Cruise, another one in Prince Harry's tent during his service in Afghanistan, and some very common ones hanging outside a shop on Chicken Street in Kabul. They were very, very available. A very common type of refugee war rag is the so-called Kalashnikov. Here on the left, on a yellow ground, the only post 1989 piece that I own, because it was given to me in 1993. On the right, an outstanding Sarkilim Dar noted before 1987. I could say a forerunner with 5 small rifles and a main one with the peculiarity of the 4 different types of bullets the Kalashnikov can fire. And here, 2 details from the back to better illustrate the quality of a refugee war rag, albeit of a very good quality, compared to a Zakini. First, the use of cotton for the weave. And in this case also, the cotton is used also for some details of the decoration. Second, the rather stiff structure and pile that is almost never soft and fluffy. Third, in the Zakinis, the structure is wool, not cotton. There is practically always the gray colored wool weft, and the selvage is woven with shaggy black goat wool. I just want to say that there are numerous, a lot types of decoration refugee war rugs. The internet is full of them, so I will not go through. Anyway, here are 3 Zaronim examples from collector friends. The middle one shows a leather commemorative of the Soviet retreat and is very similar to the one we saw in the Tom Cruise movie. And here, just 2 examples of the vast post-enduring freedom operation production. The first, a refugee war rag, still shows clearly visible details of the war against terror decoration. I have to say that in some later ones, the aircraft carrier, for example, at the bottom, already becomes unintelligible. The second rag on the right is part of the new production that mixes the old tradition of landscape circulindars with the new contemporary themes. And now some issue. So the first, to be or not to be a war rag. What makes a war rag a real war rag? The market and some collectors have introduced into the group of war rugs some carpets that do not show weapons. A special case is the Atlas rugs that, however, in limited cases, such as this beautiful one, shows weapons and vehicles. My friend Vittorio Bedini count that there are no more than around 10 pieces in the world, 10 Atlas pieces in the world with map and weapons between together. And to give just a couple of examples, these 2 types are always included among war rugs. I think because made during wartime, you may say, but neither the first one made in Iranian refugee camp, nor the second one made in Afghanistan show weapons. And connect to the Atlas issue, there is the Boetti issue. At some point, around the late 90s, with the aim, I think, of making these carpets more valuable and interesting for the art market, some dealers and collectors began to call them Boetti carpets, Boetti rugs. I think suggesting that the great artist Alighiero Boetti was behind this production. In this photo, we see him at work in his workshop in Peshawar, just around 1990, working on one of his tapestries. And you can see behind him a war rug hanging on the wall. Clearly, looking at his production, part of it made in Afghanistan and part in Pakistan by Afghan embroiderers, one can see how easy it was to bring war rugs close to the name of the artist, who died in 1994. But he himself said, commas, with embroidered maps, I did not invent anything, neither the shapes nor the colors, close commas. Indeed, in peacetime, the map of Afghanistan recurred as a decorative motif on trucks and cards, on postage stamps, and on store signs. I personally asked the Boetti Foundation in Rome, and was confirmed to me that the artist obviously knew them, knew the rugs, the war rugs, but there is no involvement with war rugs. Besides, if you look carefully at the map rugs, you can clearly see that they are copied from school atlases. The late Australian art historian Nigel Landon first debunked this theory by reporting war rugs to a spontaneous phenomenon generated by changing events. Here, you can see him with my friend Vittorio Bedini in two pictures from 2007, when he came to Torino to study my collection. We all owe him much for the extensive studies he did together with Tim Bonihedi. Atlas or map rugs began to appear rather late, almost all of them after the Soviet retreat. One piece in my collection is considered the first to reproduce a map with a wartime landscape. And reading it from right to left and backwards, perhaps due to the effect of coping, you can see the Afghanistan, and on the top you see the front, on the bottom you see the back of the rug. One can see, I say, the Afghanistan, first at the time of peace, with houses, minaret, and flowers, while in the following map, Afghanistan is a theater of war with planes and the minaret turned muscle. Another issue, are war rugs pieces of art? Personally, I have always treated these objects as historical documents and pieces of art, so much so that in the series of exhibitions done in 1988, I always choose an art galleries as locations. And you can see here the exhibition in Venice in July, August 1988, near Teatro Fenice. And so many artists became fascinated with war rugs that they earned articles right away in art magazines. War rugs are part of contemporary art installations, and contemporary artists have been inspired by the rugs for new creation. Here, just a few examples from the installation at Art Basel in 2007, to Nevet Itzhak's computer video art, from Sisi Farasat bead embroidered war rugs, to Leah Dixon's yoga mat. Well, at least I think the original pieces are works of art. And for the moment, thank you to all. Thank you for your attention. This is the cover of my last book. And for everything, here is my email. You're welcome.
And thank you for a wonderful presentation. It's been such a pleasure to work with you, Luca. And we do have, as expected, a number of questions from our audience. So let's dig right in. Were these war rugs commercial? Do you think some of them were inspired by what was going around? You pointed out a very elaborate back to suggest that they weren't just made commercially. Tell us more, please. You're muted. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Commercial is a difficult issue. I'm quite sure that at the beginning they were purely genuine, a genuine begin. Just looking at the outside, just looking at the landscape. But immediately the war began to force people to sell the rugs and to produce new rugs, and so a new kind, like the Zacchinis, I say, a new kind of rug began to grow up in the market, and also the Westerners began to ask more and more from Afghanistan and from Pakistan, and that was a way to survive. In this way, they were commercial. Yes, I don't know. I really don't know if there were behind the war rugs phenomenon a mind who project this commercial, what is now a commercial phenomenon. I hope to be clear, to have been clear.
Well, you could talk for much longer. I'm going to ask you to be brief so that we can try to do justice to the audience's questions. How about the spread from village to village? Do you think that was natural, or were there perhaps dealers who might have made a market and encouraged weavers to make these war rugs?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe small dealers began to took pieces from another, and I think it was the phenomenon of copying from one rug from another. That's the way to spread the phenomenon, from copy to copy.
And how about financing these rugs? How did the people get the money to make them? For instance, that runner that you own.
The money to produce them, I don't know. I really don't know. I think that was a a small production at the first, a small, personal, an own production at the first, and later people probably had wool from dealers or wool from organization to survive in the refugee camps.
Okay, members of the audience who have questions, please type the questions into Q&A. I will ignore raised hands. No questions will be taken from raised hands. Type them into Q&A. Did one weaver create the Gul Rahman rug with such amazing graphics and all those helicopter details? And then perhaps her family and other women in her village began to use these motifs? Can you comment, please?
Difficult question. It's around.
It's a very sophisticated questioner who's posed that one.
Yes. It aroused to the very beginning. Some of the scholars, me too, I agree. Probably at the beginning, people copied some graphic products produced in the Kabul Academy. Maybe some graphic protest drawings and something like that. And the drawings began very wide distributed. And so people still in the West Afghanistan had some material to copy. That's the idea of the first moment. And about the Gul Rahman, I really don't know. The Gul Rahman is just one of a type. There is another similar one in the now in a German museum because it was a part of the Saladin collection that was donated to a museum, and there is a very low quality copy of the Gul Rahman. But who did it and who used it, we really don't know.
Okay, well, as we have discussed, we have a real mixture of people on these webinars, some experts, probably some friends of yours, and some people who are new to rugs and new to Afghanistan. So moving on, were most of the rugs woven by men or women?
I think both, especially in the refugee camps, where people who before the camp, before they flew out of Afghanistan, were not able to do carpets, began to weave carpets to survive. So male, female, younger people and older people, both were involved later in the carpets production. At the beginning, I think probably more women and daughters. I think it's my opinion, but at the beginning.
Okay, so one member of our audience has a war rug that was brought out for her in the mid-1980s, who visited villages and saw the rugs being put on dirt roads and run over by trucks. Can you comment on that practice?
I can't comment. I don't know about this practice.
It is a common thing with other rugs to age them. I don't know.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Like another way to age them is to wash, to make chemical washing and other techniques. But I don't know at the mid of the 80s if were a normal method to age the carpet to go up with the trucks and on the road. I don't know.
And were there any changes during the Soviet occupation where the Soviets were commissioning rugs?
With Vittorio Bedini, we tried to go through the Soviet issue. We tried to make a deep research in Russia with a mother language woman. But what we found is that no one was interested at that time in the war rugs. Surely some of the ex-soldier, some of them has got a war rug. But what was said that was the soldier to have request the rugs during the occupation. For what we know, it doesn't reflect the truth. Also, because for the Soviet army, the 10 years in Afghanistan, as we can say for us, for allied forces, the 20 years, were not a good period.
Mm-hmm.
Was a dramatic experience for Soviets in Afghanistan. So, for what I say, they were not interested in produce war rugs because the rugs reflect a bad image of Soviet in Afghanistan. When I bought my first collection, I say in 1986, and I were in the Freilager in the deposit of carpets in Switzerland, in Germany, and I was looking for carpets coming directly from Kabul to Europe. When I were lucky, I could find one war rug in between hundreds of Baluchi. And they said to me that it was very, very difficult to export war rug from inside Afghanistan because Russian customers weren't very happy to export such a bad image of the Soviet occupation. That's what I heard with my ear at that time. I don't know if I answered to you.
And have you ever heard that war rugs were purchased by the Mujahideen for patriotic reasons?
Yes, I heard it, but later, after the Soviet retreat, and I were not more interested in because I made my exhibition. And I decided to keep close my collection at the very specific moment. But I heard it, and especially the refugee rugs made in Peshawar in Pakistan, we saw so many different kind of type of design, patriotic design, we can say, yes, like the one you have on your back.
Mm-hmm. And the wool that was used, was that all from local sheep, or did the weavers also rely on imported wool?
At the first, I am sure that the wool came from local ships, and the quality of the first rugs I own, and all the friends of the scholars that visited my collection could testify, is so light wool that in the later carpets you can't find. And the reason is that Soviet army, after 85, 86, began to do a war on ground, and they, like in every war, they destroyed everything and killed animals. I didn't show you this evening, but in the late period, in 1988, we can find some rugs made with dead animals, wool, because at that time were the only wool at disposal. In the later in the refugee camps, all the wool was given by the ON organizations and so on, was given.
Understood. And while you have explained that your collection focuses on the early rugs, have you ever seen Taliban war rugs? War rugs remarking or illustrating the Taliban's activity?
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't.
All right. Well, thank you so very much. This has been a wonderful presentation. We have comments thanking you in multiple languages. I can only convey Julia Bailey and my own thank you in English, but we also have wonderful thanks in Italian. So on behalf of all of our guests today and the New England Rug Society, Julia and myself, thank you. For our audience, we will take a break in November, and we will resume with a co-sponsored webinar with the Textile Museum in December on Baluch rugs. So our next theme also you may consider related, the intrigue of Baluch rugs, that will be presented by DeWitt Mallory, a New England Rug Society member, and that will be on December 10th at noon. You will receive an invitation. And then in January, we co-sponsor a webinar on Anatolian Kaleems with Ali Riza Tuna, hosted by the Textile Museum Associates of Southern California on January 14th. And on February 11th, we are hosting a webinar with a Swedish textile expert, Gunnar Nilsson, on Swedish textiles, again, February 11th. And then we will wrap up this third season of New England Rug Society webinars on March 24th, Saturday, March 24th, with a webinar entitled Silk and Wool, Cross Currents in Influences on Turkish Rugs and Textiles, by another longtime New England Rug Society member and presenter, Gerard Paquin. So thank you all. We look forward to seeing you in December. And thank you especially to Luca Brancati, our speaker today on Afghan war rugs. Bye-bye.
Thank you to you all. Bye-bye, thank you.